There are wrestlers who chase glory. There are wrestlers who chase gold. And then, there was a man who chased truth. Through barbed wire and thumbtacks, through broken bones and shattered dreams, Mick Foley didn't just perform wrestling, he lived it. This is his story, told in the only language he ever truly mastered. Quote 1, "And I think I proved tonight that I'm hardcore." Picture this, it's 1995. ECW Arena. The crowd is rabid, bloodthirsty. Mick Foley, still calling himself Cactus Jack, has just survived another war. His body is a roadmap of violence. Fresh cuts bleeding through old scars. His face a canvas painted in crimson. The microphone feels heavy in his trembling hands, but his voice is steady as bedrock. But here's what you don't see in that moment. This isn't just post-match adrenaline talking. This is the final stage of every childhood beating he took, every rejection letter from wrestling schools, every person who told him he'd never make it because he didn't look the part. This quote isn't born in that moment. It's been building for years. Foley wasn't trying to prove he was hardcore to us. He was trying to prove it to himself. Every night, he looked in the mirror and saw a chubby kid from Long Island who loved wrestling more than life itself. The barbed wire, the thumbtacks, the unthinkable bumps. They weren't just spots. They were validation. They were proof that love could transform pain into art. When he screamed those words into that microphone, he wasn't boasting, he was pleading. Pleading with the universe to acknowledge that he belonged, that his sacrifice meant something, that his willingness to bleed made him worthy of the dream he'd carried since childhood. The crowd erupted, not because they witnessed violence, but because they witnessed truth. In that moment, Foley didn't just prove he was hardcore, he proved that authenticity trumps everything. That raw, unfiltered emotion resonated so deeply that it became his calling card, his identity, his legacy. But every time he said those words, he raised the bar higher. The next match had to be more brutal. The next bump had to be more sickening. He became a prisoner of his own authenticity, trapped in a cycle where proving his worth meant destroying his body, one match at a time. Quote 2, "I'm not good at anything else. This is all I've ever had." The WWE interview room feels like a confessional. Jim Ross sits across from Mankind, but the mask can't hide what's underneath. A man whose soul is as exposed as an open wound. The cameras are rolling, but this isn't performance. We're not just seeing Mankind in 1997. We're seeing 8-year-old Mick watching Jimmy Snuka leap off the cage, believing for the first time that maybe he could be something special. We're seeing the college student who chose wrestling over traditional careers, the young man who slept in his car to chase a dream that everyone else called impossible. Foley wasn't being modest. He genuinely believed he had nothing else to offer the world. While other wrestlers saw wrestling as a job, Foley saw it as salvation. It was the only thing that made him feel valuable, the only arena where his perceived weaknesses became strengths. But here's the deeper truth. He was good at other things. He was a gifted writer, a natural storyteller, a man with profound emotional intelligence. But trauma has a way of making us blind to our own gifts. Wrestling became his identity, because it was the first thing that applauded his willingness to suffer. The aftermath of this quote was seismic. WWE fans had never heard such raw vulnerability from a wrestler. In an era of larger-than-life characters, Foley stripped away every layer of pretense and showed us his beating heart. The audience didn't just respect him, they loved him. They saw themselves in his insecurities, his desperate need to matter. This quote became his anchor and his hindrance. It deepened his connection with fans while deepening his dependence on their validation. Every cheer became oxygen, every silence became suffocation. He'd shown the world his greatest fear, that without wrestling he was nothing, and now he had to keep proving that fear wrong, night after night, bump after bump. Quote 3, "Bang bang, bang bang," wasn't just a catchphrase, it was the sound of Mick Foley's sanity snapping in half and being reborn as something beautiful and terrifying. Picture young Mick, watching Wild West movies, fascinated by outlaws who lived by their own rules. Fast forward to his early wrestling days when he realized that traditional wrestling wouldn't accept him. So he became Cactus Jack, the outlaw, the madman, the wrestler who played by nobody's rules but his own. Bang bang was Foley's war cry, but it was also his warning. He was telling the wrestling world, "I'm coming for you, and I'm bringing chaos." But the hidden truth? It was also his way of psyching himself up for the violence he was about to endure. Those two words became his meditation, his mantra, his way of transforming fear into fury. Every time he said bang bang, he was pulling the trigger on his own safety, choosing danger over security, choosing authenticity over comfort. It was the sound of a man who'd rather die as himself than live as someone else's version of what he should be. Bang bang became a rallying cry for misfits everywhere. Fans who felt like outcasts found their anthem in those two simple words. It spawned a movement, a culture, a way of thinking that said, if the world won't accept you as you are, then be so real that they have no choice but to pay attention. But every time Foley said bang bang, he was committing himself to living up to the chaos those words represented. He became a prisoner of his own wildness, constantly having to prove that he was as unpredictable and dangerous as his catchphrase suggested. Quote 4, I did it for the pops, I did it for the moments. This quote comes from older, wiser Mick, the man looking back on a career that nearly killed him. But this takes us back to every single moment that led to this revelation. Every time he climbed a cage, every time he grabbed a steel chair, every time he did something that made the crowd explode, he was collecting moments like other people collect money. Foley was a moments addict. He was chasing the dragon of crowd approval, and every pop was a hit that never quite lasted long enough. He didn't care about championships or money. He cared about creating memories that would outlive his broken body. But here's what makes this quote so intense. He's not complaining. He's not saying he regrets it. He's explaining his currency. While other wrestlers were paid in dollars, Foley was paid in goosebumps, in gasps, in the collective intake of breath, when he did something impossible. The aftermath of this revelation is bittersweet. Foley got his moments, but the cost was everything. His body, his health, his ability to play with his children without pain. He traded his future for a collection of perfect seconds, and in his mind, it was worth it. But this quote became his legacy. It showed the world that some people are willing to sacrifice everything for the chance to create something beautiful, something memorable, something that matters. It made him a tragic hero and an inspiration all at once. Quote 5, I may not look like much, but I can take a hell of an ass kicking. This wasn't just a promo line. This was Foley's entire philosophy refined into one sentence. This takes us back to every moment he was underestimated, every time someone looked at his soft physique and kind eyes and decided he wasn't a threat. Foley turned weakness into strength. He acknowledged what everyone was already thinking, that he didn't look like a wrestler, and then redefined what strength meant. He wasn't strong because he could dish out punishment. He was strong because he could absorb it and keep going. This quote is about more than wrestling. It's about resilience, about the quiet strength of endurance, about the power of simply refusing to quit. Foley was telling us that sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning, it's surviving. The aftermath was transformative. Foley became the patron saint of underdogs everywhere. His willingness to take punishment became his superpower, his defining characteristic, his gift to the wrestling world. But the real consequence? He inspired a generation of wrestlers and fans to redefine strength, to find power in persistence, to discover that sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply refuse to stay down. Mick Foley never needed a script. His words came from a place deeper than performance, rawer than entertainment. He spoke the language of sacrifice, fluent in pain, conversational in courage. His quotes weren't just words. They were windows into a soul that chose authenticity over safety, truth over comfort, moments over money. He showed us that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply endure, to take whatever life throws at you and keep going, to find beauty in the broken places. Mick Foley didn't just wrestle, he lived out loud in front of everyone. And in doing so, he gave us permission to do the same.